We have a major problem with how we ramp new account executives. Your new AEs are being declared ramped at 3 or 6 months, but can they actually run discovery or execute the sales process without you jumping in to save them? Most can't, and that's the problem. Most sales teams ramp reps based on time in seat and not capability-based onboarding where you certify your new sellers. So I built a playbook full of frameworks, implementation roadmaps, and infrastructure guides that cut ramp time in half and have proven to improve win rates by 75%, and it's completely free. So stop this episode right now and go and download the Sales Readiness Playbook at therevenueenabler.com or use the link in the description below. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Hit Your Numbers podcast. Today I'm joined by Chris. Hey Chris, how's it going?
Good, thank you. James, how are you?
Yeah, doing really well. I can see lots of golf things up on the wall and a set of golf clubs there. Do you get out and play much?
Yeah, normally I do. Interestingly, I've just moved this golf bag in here because I was on a call a few weeks ago and I had an empty golf bag and someone commented that an empty golf bag isn't much use to anyone, so I decided to get the golf bag back in. Haven't been playing much recently. Actually, I've discovered paddle, and that's taking up all of my time at the moment in terms of exercise and being out. It's a bit. I'm playing on Saturday. I'm playing golf on Saturday. It's the first time for a few weeks.
Yeah. My golf bag should be empty the way that I play. Golf is definitely one of those sports though where you can't just rock up on a Sunday.
No.
And hit the ball down the middle. You do have to be on the range, I think, like maybe 1 or 2 times in the evenings or like at some point during the week.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I think it depends on what your expectation is, right?
Well, we're salespeople, right? We expect to be the best.
I mean, I get that. But I think I've always found, I've played golf now for more than 40 years, which is quite scary. And I think there's been times when I've been really serious about it, and I've done the range 2 or 3 times a week, or I've played 3 or 4 times a week, and I've practiced a lot, and my handicap's got to a really good level, and I would go down the route of having devices on my club so I could measure the distance of every shot and map it all out. And then there's other times where I just want to go out and have a chat with my mates, basically, and enjoy the countryside, right? So, and I think as long as you understand where you are and set your expectations, like many other parts of life, to be honest, you kind of don't get frustrated by it. I think if I went out on Saturday expecting it to hit it down the middle every time and, be making loads of pars and birdies, I'd probably get really hacked off, but that's not my expectation. My expectation on Saturday is just to keep warm and dry, basically.
Nice. We got really lucky a couple of years ago. We went to Wentworth for the BMW PGA. And I went with 2 other lads. And one of the lads that we went with, one of his mate was running security at the clubhouse. So we didn't go into where like the players were hanging out, but I don't know if you've seen, but like when you get through the door, there's like 2 corridors and then there's glass cabinets. Yeah. And like every year, somebody leaves the club, and we got to walk down both of those, and it was an amazing experience.
Nice. I've been very fortunate in my life to play some very nice golf courses, including Wentworth a few times actually, and that's quite, for the championship courses, that's quite common actually. It's really good.
It's cool.
Yeah, I've got maybe a controversial opinion. I don't know if this is controversial. How did you find being there versus watching it on TV?
That was the very first tournament I've ever been to. I quite liked it. It was very serious though, especially when like Rory came out on at the end of Sunday. Like there was, I don't know, 10, 15, 20,000 people following him round. But it was very serious. And then last year I went to one of the live tournaments up north. And there was like dance music at every hole. There's pizza vans and things like that. I did really enjoy that as well. So I don't know. What do you think about watching it live versus?
I've never really been a fan of watching golf live. Partly because I always want to go and play. So if I'm going to that golf course, I'd rather just play it rather than watching other people play it. But I find, and I think this is fairly common. You either have to sit at a hole and watch everyone come through, or you have to follow specific groups, and I think you kind of lose track of it. I mean, it reminds me of I actually think lots of sports are the same, right? I mean, I remember taking my nephew when he was 8 years old to his first football game in Scotland. And after about 4 or 5 minutes, he kind of tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Why can't I hear the commentary? I don't know what's happening," right? So that experience of him being used to watching football on TV and knowing what was going on because people were telling him was completely different to what it was in a stadium in a live environment, because he had no idea he didn't really know who the players were, and he didn't know what was happening. So it's kind of, I think that's quite common.
Yeah, I agree. Anyway, we digress. We did say that might happen, and it didn't last very long. But for anyone that's listening that's not into golf, we'll get into the good stuff now. So, we're here talking about running deal reviews in 2026, and there might be some slight changes that to the playbook from previous years, but we want to get into some of the tactics and some of the strategies that Chris has been using over his career. So, Chris, maybe just before we jump into the conversation around running deal reviews, maybe just give the listeners that 30,000-foot view. Who are you? A bit about your background, and then we can jump in.
So yeah, I've been working in sales for almost 30 years now, and to the conversation we had a little bit earlier, I like many people, stumbled into it. It wasn't what I wanted to do when I was growing up. It wasn't what I thought I'd ever do. I was actually working in procurement when I got the opportunity to switch into sales, which was kind of jumping onto the opposite side of the fence to some extent, but gave me some interesting insights for sure. I spent the most of my early career, in fact, up until about 10 years ago, working in the electronics industry, which was dying in Europe. So I pushed to try and make the switch into software and tech. Constantly was told that I couldn't do it, because if you hadn't sold software, it's this black art magic thing, and subsequently proved that actually sales is sales and it's all the same, and you just have a different product and probably a different ICP and a different customer base, but ultimately the skill sets and the methodologies and the motivations are all the same. So I've been working in software tech for the last 10 years, actually currently looking for a new role. So if anyone listening to this is looking for a VP of sales or a CRO or someone senior in sales or account management or customer success, I am available. But yeah, enjoying
with golf skills as well, and that's rare.
Well, skills might be relative, but
yeah,
I can knock my way around a golf course reasonably well.
Yeah. Cool. All right. And if I was to ask you, you're going, let's say you find that great next role, and you're going into a sales organization that's maybe underperforming, maybe struggling, maybe missing the number. From your perspective, what's needed inside of a sales organization to make sure that deal reviews are effective and they add value to the process?
So I think you have to start off by having a solid base of how you do things in a process and processes. Now that might be a structured sales methodology like Medic or Medpic or BAN or Challenger or Scotsman or any of the other 200 million there are that all just have different acronyms. And that doesn't mean I don't think they're worthwhile. I actually do think that they are worthwhile, but I think they're all very similar. I think if you have that tied to clarity about how that fits with the tools that you use, so whether that's CRM or sales automation or forecasting tools or whatever, and encapsulate all of that around trying to keep it as simple and easy for the salespeople to do as possible. I mentioned in the book that I wrote that I think salespeople are inherently lazy, and I've had some comments about that. And what I mean by that is I don't think they're work shy, and I don't think they don't work hard. I just think that they're very efficient at finding the easiest way to do things, and that means not using systems properly or not doing a deal review properly. Then if they can get away with it, they'll probably do it. So it's incumbent on us as leaders to make the whole process as simple as possible, as effective as possible, and also make sure that they understand why it's beneficial to them to do it. And I think that's fundamental and underpins pretty much anything we do when we're managing people.
Yeah, and they have to understand the why. Why do we do that?
Yeah, exactly.
And if we don't then set the right level of expectations, what we naturally default to is we turn them into little kind of mini interrogations, mini forecasting conversations that end up becoming why will this deal close versus what do we need to do to advance it from stage 3 to stage 4? And use them as coaching opportunities. But the rep needs to understand the why behind it so that they can do some level of prep to come into that conversation rather than let's say you're my sales leader, rather than us spending the first 15 minutes of a 30-minute deal review bringing you up to speed. It's more like that stuff should be done so that we can get straight to the point. How do we spend the next 30 minutes advancing this deal to the next stage?
Yeah.
What do we need to do?
There's two things that one that slightly goes off piste a little bit, and the other that's very relevant. But I think I did a Chartered Management Institute leadership and management course a few years ago, and one of the key takeaways from me from that was how you present things to people fundamentally impacts the outcomes. And if you present things to your team or your prospects or your clients in a way that delivers the outcomes that they want or that they see benefit in, you will have much better outcomes for yourself. So I think doing it in that way is absolutely key. And then the second point I'd make about that is, again, it ties back to what I said. If you have the right systems in place and they can keep CRM up to date easily, and I as a leader can go into CRM and see what's happening, and they understand that means I don't have to spend 30 minutes talking about what the latest status of this deal is. If you have a template for your deal reviews, and that might be a PowerPoint presentation, it might be a spreadsheet, it might be who cares what the template is, as long as it's something that works. If you have all of that in place, then you build the right basis and foundation for effective deal reviews.
100%. And the business that I run, I won't get into too much, but the amount of time we want to kick off a program, and we ask sales leadership, hey, can you run a win-loss analysis across the last 10 deals you've won successfully and the 10 deals that you've lost? It takes some days to pull that information together because they're going around to the reps and collecting were we multi-threaded, who was our champion, what was their vested interest, did we get to the economic buyer, what metrics were in the business case, did we build a business? This stuff should be in the CRM, not just a ticker box, but it's the way that we go to market. It's the way that we all agree. If you use Medic or whatever, it should be in there. And again, a bit of a digress, but when I was building my last sales org, I wanted that context in there because then I could give to marketing and say, hey, you guys are running programs to drive opportunities into the sales funnel and then help us drive them through the funnel. You need this context because the game's always changing. And, just because we built our ICP 3 years ago doesn't mean it's the same and the context the same. And that information can be really helpful, right?
Yeah. And I think that is a massively relevant point. I mean, tools like Gong is one that I've used before. I'm sure you've used it or heard of it, SalesLoft, others like it. One of the fundamental benefits of what those tools allow an organization to do is disseminate information across departments so that it's not just stuck in a silo of a sales organization. It allows a marketing team in person to go in and say, well, what are the customers actually talking about? What are the prospects looking for? Because that then, as you said quite rightly, then should be impacting what our messaging is and where we're going and how we're going about it. So, but I think that whole concept of how do you, I've just come out of a role where we implemented or re-implemented Salesforce, and to say that it overly complicated what we were trying to do would be putting it mildly. And the immediate impact was the sales team just didn't want to do it, didn't want to use it, because they were going from something that they understood and to something that was more complicated. Now, some of that might have been enablement, some of that might have been adoption, some of that might have been other things, but fundamentally it was more difficult to use than what we'd been using previously. So, it's challenging.
Templates are great. I've been doing a lot with AI for the last maybe 15 months, building custom GPTs. I have an unhealthy obsession with Lovable. I've put far too much money into that platform. But some of the tools that we're building is just-in-time training, or, when you're looking at the sales qualification, say, for example, you got your opportunities and you've got a heat map across those opportunities of Medic, rather than just going, oh, okay, so it looks really bad versus, oh, okay, let's just surface some helpful content of what good would kind of look like in this moment based on us being in stage 3, so that the seller actually, a lot of time you say to a rep, hey, we should ask some really good discovery questions to our customers. So they ask the question you've given them, but they actually don't know what they're listening for. So they asked a question. I asked Chris a question. Chris answers, and I'm like, cool, words came out of his mouth. So maybe that question worked, but were they the right words I'm looking for? And it's about giving these people these templates. So when I run a deal review, what does good look like? What should we see in these 5 or 6 buckets for a deal at this stage? What do I expect to see in here?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think part of that comes down to how people listen, right? There are lots of people who listen but don't actually hear what's being said to them, and I've certainly seen salespeople in the past, and I'm sure I've done it in the past, where you have a list of discovery questions and you think the aim is to get through them as quickly as you can so you don't miss any by the end of the conversation, rather than actually realizing that if you ask one question and you spend the next half an hour talking about the answer to that question, that's okay, because that's getting some really good information. But it's how do you take that answer and think about, okay, what does that mean next? And I think when tying us back into deal reviews, when you talk about deal reviews, and even when you talk about forecast calls or one-to-ones, when you're talking on an individual basis to a rep about what's going on in their pipeline, one of the things I always used to do was say to my team, think about the questions I'm going to ask you about your deals, because if you can't answer those questions, I'm going to send you away to find out the answers to those questions. And when you're doing a discovery call, have me in the back of on your shoulder as the little evil person going, Chris is going to ask me about this, so I need to find out about that sort of thing. So it's always that digging, and I get asked often when I'm going through interview processes what I look for in salespeople. And curiosity and pessimism are two things that I think are really key. That ability to, one, not believe everything you hear, because it's easy to do that, and people have vested interest and don't do that. But being curious enough to actually ask more questions and realize that actually people like talking about themselves and their business, so they're okay with that. So it's not a bad thing.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I totally agree. And when it comes to the cadence, what do you think is good in terms of how often they happen? Is it once a month, once a week, once every 2 weeks? Have you found something that works well?
I think that can vary depending on the condition of the business, right? I mean, as you alluded to, if I went into a business tomorrow and it needed some work, you'd probably build a more frequent cadence than a sales team that was operating effectively. It also depends on who you get to do the deal reviews. I mean, I think there's different ways you can look at. It doesn't have to be me necessarily doing a deal review. It could be another manager in the business. It could be a peer in some cases. Yeah. So you might adjust the frequency depending on who's actually running the deal review and who's having that conversation. I mean, typically we would in a settled team, I would probably look to review 1 or 2 deals in some level of detail with each rep each month. Would be kind of where it'd be.
Yeah, and I'm sure that gets a little bit more frequent as the end of quarter comes in.
Yeah,
and you've got closed plans and things like that. Yeah, it's about building the cadence. So I had a really good chat with Nick on the podcast recently. He's a SVP, and we were talking. He's talking about he gets his leadership team together and they look at the next 1 or 2 quarters, and then they work backwards and they build in their operating system into the calendar, so they have them locked in and it's aligned to the objectives rather than, oh, it's Monday, I should probably do some deal reviews this week. People have got on the team at the moment, and I'll book them in randomly. It should be the rep should know this is part of our business, just waking up every morning and breathing in oxygen. It's the same thing, and not to move them, because as soon as you start moving these things, you devalue them. Something else is more important, unless it genuinely is. That should be part of the rhythm every week as we do this or whatever.
Yeah, and I think we did a very similar thing when I was at NetSuite with a large sales organisation. Making sure that the deal reviews were mapped out for each of the sales reps going out. 4, 6, sometimes 8 weeks, with different people doing them and different expectations in terms of what might come out of it. But yeah, having that structure and schedule. So again, it comes down to allowing them to prep. Right, they know they've got a deal review every Wednesday or every second Wednesday. It makes a lot of sense to do it that way.
Yeah, agreed. The last org that I kind of built before I quit my job to start this business, the cadence that I put in again, I had to come in and turn a team around was we started off by, it was a bit intense at the beginning, but like outside of like the typical leadership stuff, I would have a call coaching session, like a call review individually with every rep every single week, and a deal review every single week. When we started to make some progress and some of the metrics started to move, I then just did them bi-weekly. So this week we would do a call review, next week we would do a deal review. For anyone that's curious, it was enterprise, so like Amazon, Vodafone, big banks, that kind of stuff. If it was maybe transactional, maybe I'd do them a little bit more often, but you managing a deal with Coca-Cola, there's not going to be a huge amount of update every 48 hours.
No, of course.
So it can be a bit overkill, and I guess we'll get to this later, but like around the value of them, we don't want to like dilute the value of a deal review. Otherwise people just like, I've got that deal review with James tomorrow. Like,
well, and to that point, I think you've got to, I think with what I've seen, you'll have your one-to-ones with the reps where you'll talk about deals. You'll have your deal reviews. You'll have your forecast call, right? So how do you? How do you make the deal review different from those other two events that are going to happen on a regular basis? And how do you make sure that the reps are seeing the value in preparing properly for those deal reviews, where they should be a little bit of a deeper dive and be, as you said, more coaching opportunities and ways to find different ideas that might move the needle as we move from this stage to that stage, or someone else comes into the mix.
Yeah, totally. But that kind of moves us nicely onto an area I wanted to talk about next. That's okay. So are there any like methods that you've deployed over the years that, you've helped, team members, reps, SDRs, whatever it might be, see the value and the benefits of the deal review so that they turn up prepared, excited, ready to get value from that conversation? Is there anything that you've deployed that, the listeners might get value from?
I mean, I think the most obvious one is that if people see other people are having good results from them, then that, so I think you have to make the process and to some extent the outcomes shareable across the team, right? So you want people to be talking about them. You want people to be, and this might be something we'll talk about as well, but I mentioned that I personally think peer-to-peer deal reviews are really useful from that perspective, because they allow one sales rep to see how someone else might think about it. I very much believe that sales is a team sport. It's not individual, and we all carry individual quotas, but ultimately we win or lose as a team. And if you build a properly diverse team, you're going to have different skill sets, different capabilities, different motivations, different likes, different dislikes. So having other people involved, I think, is good. But so ultimately that publication of success is absolutely key. And I think beyond that, I think it goes back to how you manage people generally. I'm passionate about using development for improvement and tying the whole deal review process into that whole development cycle and helping them to see that coaching is useful and making it actually coaching. It's easy to fall into a teaching environment rather than a coaching environment. I'm going to tell you what to do rather than coach you as to find the outcome. So being able to take that time and letting people see. And then the final thing I think for me is ask them how they think about it. Ask them what they're getting out of it, and then listen to what the answer is, right? And if somebody's, so again, we all learn differently, right? And it's, you might have someone in the team that gets really triggered by having a conversation in a deal, but you might have someone else that actually doesn't get much out of it. They'd much rather map it out on a whiteboard or something like that. But if you don't have a conversation with your team to understand that, you're not going to figure that out.
So we've built the leading skill optimization platform with 400 plus sales lessons, 12 courses from prospecting all the way through to late stage deal negotiation and more, one-to-one sales coaching and AI sales assistance. And I want to give you 7 days free access to the platform. The reason I want to do this is because nobody gets a degree in B2B sales. And after training and coaching hundreds of sales reps and teams in the last 2 years, most haven't mastered critical selling skills, and it's preventing them from being promoted, earning great money and building a great career in B2B sales. So go to the revenueenabler.com, grab a free trial, and join hundreds of salespeople that are closing their skill gaps and mastering sales. There's a link in the video description. I'm looking forward to getting you set up. Give me a shout with any questions. Yeah, 100%. There's a couple of things I want to unpack here, but I just want to talk about this one before I forget. Is that you're talking about like getting feedback on the quality of the deal review from the rep's perspective. I actually think you should, and I think we will get to that point soon, because we're seeing the gongs of this world being built for like interviewing. I do think, and like, you know, one of the orgs that I built, another CEO is doing something really cool there, but bringing this to market. But like, we should be recording these sessions from time to time and asking, like, if you're in an organization where, let's say, you're a frontline sales manager, you run a deal review, it's with the same rep, you're just not getting the outcomes that you're trying to get from that session just with this one rep. And it could just be because their learning style or their way of doing things is very different to everybody else, or the same approach isn't working. Like, share that recording with your line manager, you know, with Chris, for example. It'd be like, hey, Chris, I can't seem to be getting through to James, just really struggling. Can you just watch this back and just maybe give me some feedback on how I'm approaching it? Maybe you just see it through a different lens.
Yeah.
You know, or drop it into AI. Like, we build like Discovery Coach, for example. You drop a transcript in and it scores the quality of the call.
Yeah.
Why can't we do that for one-on-ones or like, you know, conversations with our people? It just helps us close the gap.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
and I think deal reviews are ideal for that. One-to-ones might be different because there might be some personal stuff that you might discuss right in a one-to-one. You're not just talking about deals. But I think in a deal review, you should be focused on the business outcomes of that deal. So it's a great opportunity to record those. And I think for the most part, because we're mostly still remote, although I certainly see a shift, certainly in the roles that I'm seeing on LinkedIn and other places, a shift to more and more people wanting people back in an office 3-4 days a week, I think. But whilst we're still doing this kind of thing, it's easy enough to record stuff, right? And you can set tools up to provide really good information. I think also it's good for the individual whose deal is being reviewed to be able to watch it back, because we all know the numbers around how much information you actually embed in a conversation. So being able to go back and see if there was anything you missed that might not have landed the first time, I think is a really good idea.
Yeah, I mean, a really big part of our business is built on that exact thing. It's called the forgetting curve, right? 40% of information that you consume, right? People listening to this, they're going to forget 40% in 20 minutes, and probably 80% in the next 7 days. So we have to reinforce it. And again, that's a good opportunity. Something else that you were speaking about earlier, Chris, there was around, I wrote down clarity on a path forward. Like, some deals are chaotic, you know, especially got like lots of stakeholders, you know, competing initiatives, building pipeline, everything else is going on, plus anything in your personal life that, you know, happens from time. Like, you come into that deal review and your just head's like it feels like you got 1,000 blenders going off. Right. And we just want to give our people, if they want to see the value in it, we want to help with good coaching questions. I wrote down coaching prompts. Like, I need to have in my back pocket just some coaching prompts that I can use for different types of situations to help Chris get clarity, so that he walks away and goes, right, all of this madness, I just need to understand, is this person an enemy, right? Or are they on our side? And to do that, I need to do this. This is my execution plan. This is how I'm going to get supported on it. And I need to get it done by this time. I was doing another podcast with another sales leader, and I loved that he was like, we use mutual action plans, not just in sales processes, but in like deal reviews and things like that. Like, me and you will build a mutual action plan. What do we need to do? How are we going to do it? What's the timeline? So that when we meet up next, we make sure it happens. And a lot of it's just like helping your people get clarity on what they actually need to do to advance that deal. Not forecast it, to actually advance it to a forecastable stage. Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm sure you've experienced this, James. I've seen on a number of occasions a deal that's been really stuck, and just in preparing for the deal review, the rep spotted something that can move the deal along. Because they're thinking about it in a slightly different way. They're stepping out of their day-to-day, trying to tie down a prospect to a commitment, or try to
speak to somebody that's been ghosting them or whatever it is, and just actually taking that step back allows them to look at it a little bit differently and think about something that they might have done in other deals, but they just haven't thought about for that deal because it's just not something they regularly do. I developed a process when I was at NetSuite that I called Win Strategizing, what I wrote the book about, and it's really designed exactly. It sort of in slightly different ways is similar to mutual action plan, but what it does is at the start of a deal, it allows a rep to basically map out all the aspects of this deal initially to determine, number one, can we win the deal? Because a lot of salespeople forget to ask that question. They've got a shiny new prospect. It's a hot lead because it's come from marketing or a BDR or an SDR. I need to chase it. I need to, because this is going to be commission for me. And often, if we again take a step back and look at it, there might be lots of red flags as to why we couldn't win the deal. And we're just going to waste a lot of time. We're going to get in a situation where in 3-6 months' time, we're going to be doing a deal review and there isn't a path forward. So again, building that, it goes back to the initial conversation with building the right process in place. When I introduced that sort of process at NetSuite, over a period of 6 months, our win rates went up significantly. Our average deal sizes went up. Our discount levels went down because we were just purely and simply in much more control and better control of the deals that we were working on. We might have had less number of deals in pipeline, but the outcome on those deals was better than what we'd had previously.
Yeah, 100%. I just want to go back to something because I don't see this as admin. A lot of people see this as admin, but I actually have this in my I use HubSpot to run my business as well, and it's something I used to use with my teams. And yes, it's a extra step, but I think what we do is we actually massively reduce the volume of noise in pipeline or in CRM. So this is the exact field, like word for word in HubSpot, that I fill out if I'm doing any prospecting myself, but also recommend people do. And it basically just says the field is, why in capitals does this account need to meet with us now?
Yeah.
In capitals? And it just gets me to stop and go like, why the hell am I about to spend, I don't know, maybe 10 phone calls, 7 emails personalized, maybe some direct mail, maybe some LinkedIn stuff, maybe do a discovery. Like should I even be prospecting this account?
Yeah.
And to your point, like have a field like that maybe is updated once a week in the deal review is, why would we lose this deal? Or why would the economic buyer not want to fund this initiative?
Yeah.
Do we even know the answer to that question? To your point, how do we make people more self-aware so that when they're doing the deal review prep, they're like, so like really quick story, before I quit my last job, I don't want to devalue the process, but I spoke about these like weekly coaching calls and deal reviews. And it got to a point where towards the back end, I was like, I can retire myself now because these guys are coming to the call review going, I know we're listening to the call with IBM today. I know exactly what you're going to say. When they said this, I should have said that, and I didn't. And I'm like, perfect. They're looking through it in the same lens as me, so that next time that happens, guess what they're thinking? To your point, James is on my shoulder. In our deal review tomorrow afternoon, he's going to ask me this, so I should probably ask it right now.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's a massive win.
Yeah, and I think the other useful thing that I found with the process that I had, and I guess mutual action plans would do the same thing. If you've got and this depends on what you're selling and the nature of the sales process, but at the time, we had multiple people involved from our side of the business in the sales process. So you had a sales rep, you had a solution consultant, you had a services salesperson or a partner who was going to do the delivery. And having that win strategy outlined and reviewed by the whole team made sure that you had agreement, collaboration, coordination. Everyone was going in the same direction. So, when we went in to do a demonstration, there wasn't any ambiguity about what we were going to show and why we were going to show it, and how that tied into a value messaging or what we were positioning from a delivery perspective, because everyone had bought into it. And I think all of those things remove friction. And when it comes to deal reviews, they're very simple checkpoints that you can use to just check that the right things have been done by all of the people involved.
Yeah, agreed. And if you want to create a bit of scale, one of the things that we now do with sales orgs, like let's take when we're doing like medic implementations, is we'll rather than doing like a one-on-one deal review, like you're my manager and we're just in a Teams call, we'll be like, hey, look, on a Friday afternoon when it's typically quiet, let's just spend an hour. Let's get everybody on the call. We'll get everybody to come prepared, but we'll pick one, maybe two deals. I give them all, like, I started off by giving it just to leadership, and it was just like a coaching prompt, one pager for like two questions for every area of medic. And the manager would just have it open on the side and they'd say, hey, Chris, how is this person going to justify it to the economic buyer, for example, right? And then what we did is we started actually giving that prompt sheet to the AE so that when the main AE was presenting, hey, here's the deal, here's the medic qualification, let me walk you through it. Different reps were asking different questions from that sheet to make it really interactive.
Yeah.
But what they were doing at the same time is the reps that are asking that question, they were
think-
reinforcing those questions. And they were like, wait, could I answer that for my opportunity?
Yeah.
And we just started to see like the gap closing so much faster in those skills and those areas just by getting everybody on the call, and the sales leader doesn't even need to be in that meeting.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's great. It goes back to what we were talking about around, shared responsibility, shared learnings, working as a team, peer-to-peer reviews. I used to do that with my forecast calls. I'd do that, so my forecast calls were not just me and my team. It was somebody from marketing, somebody from the BDR organization, somebody from the delivery team, somebody from product, somebody from the partner organization. I knew what the reps were going to tell me about their forecast because I was talking to them on a daily basis about it. But all these other people had, you get some random person going, well, we had that deal 6 months ago that was quite like this, and the same problem. Have you thought about doing this? And you just get this flow of ideas and people actually feeling like they're able to add value, which is great.
Yeah, 1,000,000%. I'm just conscious of your time. Is if you was to think about a way of kind of keeping them fresh and not repetitive every single week or every couple of weeks, anything come to mind that the listeners can use to kind of change things up? Or
yeah, I think so. We've talked about some of this already. The peer-to-peer bit for me is really important. So it's a different level, and I think also you get a different outcome when a manager's not in the room. I used to do this thing when we had our quarterly sales meetings. Again, it wasn't just a sales meeting. We'd invite the assembled cast from different departments in, but I would have the team spend an hour before I entered the room doing deal reviews, doing very quick, snappy deal reviews, and then I'd ask them to summarise what they discussed before we kicked off the meeting. So allowing them to have that, talked about what I do with forecast calls. The other major thing that we did, and I thought really what was having deal reviews done, and this depends on the size of organisation, obviously, but I often would not do deal reviews with my own team. I do it with one of my peers' teams, and they do mine, or we'd mix it up. So when we talked about having a schedule, we would have a schedule for a quarter that says, right, Chris is going to do these deal reviews with these reps, Alistair's going to do these deal reviews with these reps, and you get a different perspective on it, right? A different, I've been doing this for X amount of time. Alistair's been doing it for 20 years longer than me. He's got different outlooks and experience. He's got a different personality. He's got a different methodology that he might use. And that, again, and we change that around all the time. So, if I was doing Alistair's team one month, I might do Scott's team the next month, or we'd mix it up. And I think having that variability just keeps it fresh, keeps it open. And then involving even more senior managers in that process as well, especially as you get close to quarter end, right? Because they're getting interested and they're kind of getting excited about it. So those are probably the 3 or 4 things that I've used in the past.
Yeah, that's a brilliant idea. I really like that. And maybe even just every now and then, bring in the VP of customer success or onboarding, so that, because they might ask some really interesting questions. And we also found when we did that, at Staff Circle, sometimes the VP of CS would be like, hey, there's a gap here, and I just want to make sure that we close it before we onboard this customer. When's your next meeting with them? Would you like me to join and support you to do that?
Exactly. Well, how
Yeah.
many times has that been the catalyst for moving a deal on, when you bring someone that isn't usually part of the deal into the discussion because there's something that's important to them, whether it be a gap in functionality or a question around the delivery of a product or a solution. So, yeah, I think I'm massively bought into the whole idea that I and some of the podcasts I've been on before have been discussing the role of the CRO versus the kind of siloed roles of a sales lead and a marketing lead and a customer success lead. And I'm really bought into the concept of a CRO because I think that revenue generation works as an overall business, not as individual silos. And what we do in sales is massively impacted and impacts marketing and hugely impacts customer success. But at the same time, customer success impacts what we do, because if they're not able to do their job, we're not getting referenceability, we're not getting the advocacy we need to deliver new clients. So this involvement of other people from around the business, I think, is absolutely crucial.
Yeah, agreed. When I was building Staff Circle like this, we couldn't really scale this. So like if you're a fairly small team, this can be really effective. We got to a point where we saw such good response from bringing in different department leaders into the sales process from like a trust and authority perspective, that I actually built it into the sales process. So when you got to a specific stage, one of the steps was you had to do the customer had to do a 15-minute call with our VP of customer success. And that was where we just basically destroyed the competitors around our onboarding capability that they just couldn't do. And then we'd also bring in the VP of product. We started doing the CEO. CEO is fantastic, but then it turned into like a 2-hour conversation about data lakes and things like that. These HR people were like, what are you doing? Right. Super intelligent dude, but just not right. So we brought in the VP of product, and he did that kind of North Star roadmap. You're not investing in a static tool. We've got big plans in U-shape. And like, these are the little things that we came out from deal reviews, and we're like, that's a gap with that prospect. We need to, they're nervous about buying from another vendor and it being static as well. Let's just get you on a call with Ben who can have that conversation. And we did it a couple of times, and it just actually helped us improve our overall production line, the sales process. So I think that's brilliant. If there was there's one thing, Chris, as we kind of wrap here, that a sales leader listening could take away or action, like, what do you think that might be?
I think something that you mentioned in the conversation around the importance of, when you schedule deal reviews, making sure you don't move them because you don't want to devalue them. I think that's absolutely crucial. I think if you're going to do this, and it might not be for every business, there's some businesses that are so transactional that doing deal reviews is just you just can't do it. Although you can probably adapt it to some extent. But I think making sure that you as an individual recognize the value of doing them, and that is absolutely understood by your team, and they can look at you and say, you're not just doing this to check a box for your manager, you're doing this because you see the value in it. If you don't have that, then nothing else that we've talked about is going to make any difference.
Yeah, and if you turn them into like micro forecast calls, you're like, hey, Chris, I know we're meant to be here for half an hour. I got like 7 minutes till my next meeting. Sorry about that. Can I just get a quick update on these 17 deals?
Yeah.
Oh, dude, like, I'm going to find any reason not to come to the next one.
Exactly. Well, you just won't prepare for it, right?
Yeah, totally. One thing I would recommend, this is something that I talk about a lot, and one of my customers, she put it in with her team, is actually giving them a talk track. Like, again, when I got into sales, nobody sat me down and said, right, for our context, this is what commit means. This is what upside mean, or best case, or whatever forecasting categories you have. And then you've probably seen this a lot over the years. You jump onto a forecast call, and the rep spends like 4 minutes talking about a deal. And I'm like, dude, I actually don't need any of this. Like, I just need this, this, and this. So she gives them a talk track. Like we do when we do a discovery or a demo or a business case meeting. It's like, hey, this is how you should start the deal review conversation. So James, I want to talk to you about IBM in the forecast. It's currently sat in stage 3. This is what we know. and then open up Medic or whatever your methodology or qualification or whatever we're calling it today you use. Walk me through it. Let's get to the good stuff. I don't need to know they really like us. And they're based in Manchester, and they went to school with, I don't need that.
Well, what you'll find is the reps will talk about all of that stuff for the deals that are going well, and they'll talk about nothing for the deals that aren't going well, right? And I think so. We talked about the use of a template or a framework for deal reviews is really important, but I absolutely agree. And I think when I run forecast calls, I absolutely, if I go into a new team, we'll sit down with each person and say, here's what I expect on a forecast call. Here's what I'm looking for. This is the information I need, or this is the information the team needs. Let's not make it war and peace. Let's not do these things. But this is, and again, it goes back to CRM's in the right place. And you can look at CRM. You don't need all of that background information because it should already all be there. So, yeah.
If that was just a podcast, that 30 seconds part of what you just said then, honestly, you've been around the block for a while, so you'll notice. And we work with so many sales organizations, and I'm like, dude, if you just put that in, they would know they need to collect that information to present it to you, which means they're going to go and collect it throughout the sales process, which is only going to either going to qualify out because they can't capture it because there's nothing to capture, or they're going to capture it and they're going to package it up and they're going to use it with their champion to drive consensus across the org and win the deal, right? It's just, these are the little tools that we have to start putting into our sales organization. And I don't think they're like new silver bullets. A lot of us have been doing it for a long old time. No. Because we're, like you said earlier, we're curious. Something isn't working. Something has to change. I'll try this, see if it works.
Yeah, and I think that's right. I mean, I think you we talked about it, right? There isn't really an enablement program for salespeople, and there isn't a one size fits all. There certainly isn't any silver bullets in what we do. I've worked with salespeople who have been exceptionally good salespeople, been in the same industry for 15, 20 years, and then you introduce the idea of how they might actually get to know their prospects a little bit better, and it's game changing for them. They're not bad salespeople. It's not that they don't deliver, but all of a sudden they start to see outcomes that are completely different from what they've seen before, just by making very minor adjustments in a sales process. And yeah, I mean, it's a lot of us have stumbled across this stuff, as you said, because we've just had to fix things that haven't been working.
Yeah. Epic conversation. I think there's going to be a lot of value for a lot of people. So thanks so much, Chris, for putting some time together. Highly recommend you go and follow Chris. And also, if you're listening, we've got some founders that listen to this as well. Like if you're looking for your next sales leader, obviously you can tell that Chris knows his stuff. Like this stuff wasn't just made up on the spot. So I highly recommend having a chat with Chris. Chris will put a link to your LinkedIn in the show notes. But yeah, go follow Chris. Really knows his stuff. Thanks so much for putting in the time today.
Pleasure. Thanks, James. I've enjoyed it.
Awesome. All right. I'll see you soon. Cheers.
Bye.
All right. Thanks for listening to this episode. I've got something else I want to give you before we wrap up here. So we've built the leading skill optimization platform with 400 plus sales lessons, 12 courses from prospecting all the way through to late stage deal negotiation and more, one-to-one sales coaching and AI sales assistance. And I want to give you 7 days free access to the platform. The reason I want to do this is because nobody gets a degree in B2B sales. And after training and coaching hundreds of sales reps and teams in the last 2 years, most haven't mastered critical selling skills. And it's preventing them from being promoted, earning great money, and building a great career in B2B sales. So go to the revenueenabler.com, grab a free trial, and join hundreds of salespeople that are closing their skill gaps and mastering sales. There's a link in the video description. I'm looking forward to getting you set up. Give me a shout with any questions.